We're going to start off with just doing a review of everything from yesterday, putting it all together. Our goal for the end of the week is to have everything we need to know about graphing straight lines down so that we can do some of these art projects by the end of the week. Okay? So you guys are really good now at looking at a line and figuring out what the slope and y-intercept is. So the next step is to do it in reverse. So if I give you a slope and y-intercept, you can graph a line. Okay? So that's the goal. So go ahead and make sure it's facing on this side. There's two sides on this. I'm going to do this side, and then I'll have you guys do the other side. Okay? So just follow along, write everything down. And if you're absent at all last week, hopefully this will fill in any gaps you might have. So remember, there's three methods for finding slope. Right? Three methods. We got graphing, we have a table method, and then we have a formula. And at the very end, I'm going to ask you, well, which one do you think you prefer, the graph, table, or formula? Sometimes it really doesn't matter which one you use, but other times it does. One's easier than the other. So be thinking about in what circumstance will one be easier than the other. All right, so let's first graph these 2 points. So remember, -3, 6 means from the center, go left 3, up 6. So start the center, go 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And 1, -2 means left 2 and down 2. Okay? So start in the center again, go left 1 and down 2. Now, if you don't have a straight edge, this will work for any time you don't have a straight edge. You can always use the paper itself, fold it over without actually creasing the paper, right? And then you can draw a nice straight line in any circumstance, right? So you're not folding it permanently. You just fold it over temporarily, make your straight line, and then unfold it. And you might have a little bit of fold, but nothing that's really too obvious. Okay? Now remember, slope equals rise over run, which is x over y, because the rise, the up and down, is on the y-axis, and the slope is on the run is on the x-axis, the left and right. Okay? So what is the rise here? Is it positive or negative, by the way? Yeah, this is negative, right? You can tell that nice negative is going down. So this is negative. So we already know the m, which we use for slope, for moving, is negative, right? And let's go ahead and count. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 down. So it's 8 down. So the rise is -8. Now what is the run? 1, 2, 3, and 4. So +4 because it goes to the right. And then of course, always simplify when possible. -8 over 4 is equal to what? We know it's negative. -2, right? 4 goes in 8 2 times. So that's one method, right? We spent one day doing that method, and we can do 2 other methods. And of course, if we do a different method on the same problem, the answer should be the same. So as we do these other methods, we must get the same answer. If not, something's wrong. We're not doing a different problem right now. Same problem, a different way. So let's go over to here and now do using the table. This is what we did on Tuesday, I believe. So we make a table. Okay. And go ahead and put the 2 coordinates in there. We have -3, 6, and we have 1 and -2. So write those both down. And what we need to do is find out how far is it from 6 to negative 2. Like 6 minus what will give us negative 2. And how far is it from negative 3 to positive 1? So negative 3 plus what is going to be 1. And if it helps you, you can use a number line. You can make a number line to figure it out. So start at 6 and go how many to get to negative 2? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, down 8. And it makes sense because 6 minus 8 is negative 2. Same thing here. Start at negative 3 and go up to 1. So start at negative 3. How far to get to positive 1? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And of course, it's still going to be y over x. So your slope is going to be the y, negative 8, over the x, 4, and simplifies again to negative 2. So, as I mentioned before, we better get the same answer using two different methods. It's not a different question, it's just a different way of doing it. Now, of course, this is probably the easier way if you're given a graph. But if you're not given a graph, you're just giving just 2 points, this wouldn't be possible. So I'd say the graph is probably the easiest when you're given, but if you're not given it, this is probably easier, or maybe the formula. Okay? So let's go down to the bottom left and now do the formula. Okay. Okay. Write down the formula. So do you remember what that formula was? We did it on Thursday on the video. So we know the y's go on top, right? So y's go on top. So we did y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that was the formula method. And I mentioned in the video that the best or a good way to start this is to start off with a bunch of blank parentheses, because we have subtraction in the formula, but if the coordinates themselves are negative, it can cause a double negative, which we don't want to mess up on. So go ahead and label this x1, y1, and x2 and y2, so we make sure we plug everything in right. So top left is going to be y2. Okay, so plug in negative 2 there. And then y1, that's right here, 6. x2, which is 1. And x1, which is negative 3. So two things that can go wrong here is that if you have a negative and a negative, you gotta make sure you make that a positive, but you can also accidentally plug things in the wrong place. So be careful on both of those. So right here, two negatives make a positive. Let's make those both pluses. So we have negative 2 minus 6, which is negative 8. And 1 plus 3, which is 4. And you can notice that it looks very similar to everything else. Negative 8 over 4, negative 8 over 4. So a different method doesn't really mean different numbers or different answer. It's just a different way of doing the same thing, and we get the same answer. So now, given those three possible ways of doing it, right, go ahead and write now on the bottom right, if given a choice, which of these three methods would be easier to find the slope for this problem? So would you think the graph, the table or the formula. Okay. And it just depends on the given problem. It could be either one. There's no right or wrong answer. I just want you to pick one and say why. Okay. Once you've done that, go ahead and flip it over. Do the other side. When you're done with both sides, I'll check it for accuracy and give you today's assignment, and which is due at the end of the period. Okay. And I'll go over a little bit of that in a moment too. Okay. So that's everything that you need to get started. So go ahead and begin. Right? That's what you guys did last week. Now, what you were doing was putting in the slope and y-intercept. But the part that you guys didn't type out was the y equals, and next to the slope there was always an x right here. I don't know if you can see it down there. Okay, there is always an x down on the formula. So what you're going to do right now is look at the worksheet, and you can see wherever the x is, that's how you know that's the slope. The number in front of the slope, the number in front of the x is always the slope, and the number by itself that has no x is the y-intercept. And that's how you guys are going to be able to graph and make those art projects later, is by knowing where's the y-intercept and where's the slope, starting off that way. Okay? So let's go here and look at this. Okay. So you can see on these, remember we use, for slope, that's how something moves. So we say m equals. So m is always going to be slope. Y-intercept is going to be b. Okay, because that's where we begin. So you're always looking at, remember this is y equals mx plus b. You're looking at what number is in front of the x. That's the key. So what number is in front of the x, like on number 1? Right? So there's the x, so that means the slope is 2. So you write m equals 2. So the m is how the line moves. That's why it's m equals the slope. And then the number by itself, that's the y-intercept. That's the beginning point. So here's what you're doing for each of these. You're identifying what the slope and y-intercept is. The next step after this is to be able to take these, give you an empty graph, on number 2, which one's the slope? So find the x. Where's the x on number 2? Okay, and what number's in front of the x? Right, and 3/5. So you write 3 over 5. Remember, that's the same as the up 3, right 5 for graphing. We're just doing the same thing we did before, but in reverse. What's the beginning point on the y-axis? It's positive 1. Okay. Now let's go down to number 5 here. What's the slope on number 5? Okay. So what number is in front of the x on number 5? Yeah, so you have to look at that carefully. So what you don't want to do is say the first number is the slope, the second number is the y-intercept. That's not necessarily true. It's wherever the x is. If the x is second, that's what the slope is. Unlike up here, the slope came first. It was 3/5. So don't go by the order it comes in. Go by, well, what's next to the x. That's how you know it's the slope. So that's negative 1/4, which means the y-intercept is 2. Okay? Now you might look at number... You might look at number 6, right? Number 6, there's only one number. So is this negative 3, is that the slope, or is that the y-intercept? Because
there's no x.
No x. So what is the slope? What is the slope if it's not given? 0. So that's what kind of line if the slope is 0? What kind of... Well, they're all straight lines. Well, it's undefined at 0. But what direction does the 0 slope go? Okay. So you might recall, well, we have a y-intercept of -3, right? So on the y-axis at -3, a slope of 0 will be a horizontal line. So 0 fun. Remember, it's when he's skiing and it's completely flat, so it's really hard. It's 0 fun. So that's what a 0 slope looks like. That's what the equation of that line is. This is like the first round of the game we played the other day. Okay? Now, we haven't got into it really, but an x equals, right? That's a vertical line. So x equals 8. You notice how everything else is y equals, which that's the norm. But when you have an x equals, you don't have a y-intercept, and the slope is undefined because it's just a vertical line going through 8 on the x-axis. So it's the only time that there's no y-intercept because there's no variable y in the equation. We can't have a y-intercept if we don't have a y in the equation. So that's where we have a no y-intercept and the slope is undefined. Okay. So an x equals is kind of different from all the others. All right, that should give you everything you need to finish 3, 4, 8, and 9, and then finish the front and back. And in a little bit, right about 1:25, about 10 minutes left in the period, I'll start checking off both of them, and you can file them into the cabinet. Okay. All right. Go.